Hi everyone, it's Sarah. I'm here today to talk about anxiety in this vlog, specifically about the medication that I take for anxiety, why I made that decision, what I take today, and the changes that are upcoming for me. But before I start the vlog, I want to share that I am not a doctor, I am not a therapist. I'm simply sharing my experience with you. And if you or someone that you know is experiencing mental illness, please go and see a licensed provider for help. This is just to give you an insight into some experience, not to give you medical advice, because again, I'm not a doctor. So I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder in 2014. So I've been living with this for almost 5.5 years. And when I first went down this road, I was actually misdiagnosed as being depressed. And this was likely because I couldn't get out of bed. I was sleeping 12 hours a day and I was exhausted. I didn't have much of an appetite. I didn't have much interest in doing things. So these all sound like symptoms of depression. When I was diagnosed, it didn't feel right necessarily, but I realized maybe I was missing something. Maybe this was wrong. So my general practitioner started me on some antidepressants, and the first few that I tried didn't have an impact. And then the third, maybe fourth that I tried, called Celexa, I had a very adverse reaction and had a panic attack like I've never had since. So, in that process, we recognized that I needed to see a specialist. So, that's when I met my psychiatrist, and I've been working with him ever since to manage my anxiety. So, what's my belief on medication? I obviously take medication to manage my mental illness, but each person needs to decide what's right for them. There are a lot of factors that you have to consider, both your personal beliefs, perhaps other medical conditions that you have. And to be honest, this is medication that we don't fully understand and that can have adverse impacts on you and can especially have adverse impacts on you if you're pregnant. So, this is not something to be entered into lightly. There are many reasons why folks might choose not to use medication. But for me, at this point in my life, 5.5 years ago, I wasn't functioning. I wasn't able to go to my job at the company and commit to things in my personal life. I was exhausted. And so it was pretty straightforward to me that this is something that I needed to do. So I made the decision to start medication and then started working with my psychiatrist to find the right drugs. And unfortunately, throughout this process, I learned two important things. The first thing that I learned was that everybody is different. And I mean that in that one person could take the same pills as another person and have completely different responses. So when you look at the efficacy rates of antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication, it's possible that they don't look very good, but that's because we respond to them differently. And even after decades of research, we still don't quite understand exactly the mechanisms by which they modify the brain chemistry. So that's a little frightening to me, but it just helped me understand this is a lot of trial and error. The second thing that I learned about me personally is that I'm very, very sensitive to medication. And so in that first year, we went through about 20 different combinations of medications until we found the combination that I'm on right now. So that was really difficult because it was constantly adding a dose of something and then titrating or lessening a dose of something else. So it's this constant cycle of all of these different emotions and changes in mood. And sometimes I would take a pill and I would feel absolutely just dead inside. Other times it would actually make the anxiety worse. So it took a long time to get to this combination. But I want to talk about this today because these are the medications that I take. They have names, and it's important to just say this is what it's like to manage generalized anxiety disorder. So the first pill that I take is called Fatsima, or Fetsima, and this is an SNRI. And what it does is it regulates the serotonin and norepinephrine receptors in the brain and the way that those chemicals are either absorbed or not absorbed. SNRIs are traditionally used for depression, and many antidepressants are used to manage generalized anxiety disorder, which is what I have. And I went through a lot of antidepressants before I found this one. We first started with a class called the SSRIs. You would probably know things in this class like Prozac. And these only regulate the serotonin. Unfortunately, none of those seemed to work for me. And then we began exploring the SNRI class. Fatima is a relatively new medication in that class, and since then there have been more that have come in. Unfortunately, most antidepressants, SSRIs, and SNRIs have a slew of side effects that nobody really enjoys. For me, the Fatima, it gives me a lightheaded feeling when I take it, but it's my body's adjusted. The two things that have not gone away is it's a diuretic and it makes me really warm. You're always warm when you take this medication. So I'm often warm and running to find the restroom, which is not really pleasant. But what you'll learn if you go down this road is you're always trading off the benefits and the side effects of any medication. And this one was the best that I found, where I got a lot of benefits from it. And there weren't so many side effects that I didn't feel I could handle it. So that's Fatima. And then the next one that I take is called Buspirone. And these are little teeny tiny pills. And Buspirone, or Buspar, as it's known, is an anti-anxiety pill, and it's specifically formulated for generalized anxiety disorder. This has been a really good medication. It has limited side effects. It is mild enough that for most people, they can take this on an as-needed basis. So perhaps you have mild generalized anxiety disorder and you're not sure if you'd like to explore medication. I would recommend looking into Buspirone because it is something that you can take ad hoc. But for me, pairing these two together, I take 3 doses a day of these two, and that's what keeps my anxiety manageable. So I'm really thankful. Like I said, it took a year to find that combination, and it keeps me in a pretty steady state, but not always. So that's when we have our little helper pills that come in for those days. And the first is something you've probably heard of before, and maybe you have an interesting opinion of. I know I did, and that's lithium carbonate. And lithium carbonate is a very old drug. It's been in use for a long time. It's also naturally occurring. So in places of the world where they have naturally occurring lithium in the water supply, the incidences of depression and anxiety are lower. So this is something that exists naturally in the world. So for some folks, that's a big plus. Lithium is traditionally used to treat bipolar disorder, but for people like me who have generalized anxiety, when you feel a kind of a breathlessness or extra anxiety, this is something that you can add on. So if I'm not feeling great, I'm feeling anxious about something coming up, kind of a prevalent, this kind of anxiety blanket is what I call it, then I'll add a lithium or two a day. Lithium has some very unfortunate side effects. It's incredibly toxic to the kidneys, especially taken at high doses and over a long period of time. So if you take lithium, you'll have to get blood tests to make sure that the levels that you're maintaining are healthy. And it's also absolutely verboten for pregnant women. So this is something that you couldn't take if you were expecting or if you were nursing because it passes through breast milk. But it works. That's the thing. The only side effect I've experienced is a slight metallic taste in the mouth. So if I have just a little bit higher everyday anxiety, then I'll look at lithium and say, hey, let's do this. The other thing that sometimes happens for me and has happened less has been acute panic attacks. And this is basically this onslaught, this rush of anxiety where I feel like honestly I'm going to die. The first time I had a panic attack, I thought I was having a heart attack, but the heart is fine, able to withstand panic attacks. And so for those, I take lorazepam. And lorazepam, you might know by its brand name, which is Ativan. And it is a teeny tiny little pill, but it packs a huge punch. So Ativan is a benzodiazepine, and it attacks the GABA, and attacks, it feels like an attack. It works with the GABA receptors in the brain. So it's a mild to moderate tranquilizer. You might have heard of Xanax. That's the most popular medication in this class. Unfortunately, benzodiazepines are highly addictive, and practitioners don't recommend that you take them for more than 4 to 6 weeks at a time. I've never been on them for that long. I take them as an as-needed basis. Most of my panic attacks happen related to travel, especially travel to unknown places, or they actually happen at night. Benzos are difficult because they really do shut the brain down. I remember the first time I took a Xanax And it was like a switch had gone off, and I was there, but I wasn't there. I think I stared at a wall for maybe an hour. I have just staring, no thoughts, nothing going on. It's really pretty frightening to be disconnected from reality in that way. So I know if I take these, they'll work, but it really ends any productivity in my day. And actually, since I tend to have panic attacks in the evening, it's not the worst thing because then I can sleep it off. It takes, for me, it's about 12 hours to clear the system. So I'll feel a little bit hazy. Like I said, they're highly addictive. I was dealing with some anxiety last year during a period of travel, and I took this maybe 4 or 5 days in a row. And even after 4 or 5 days, I had very unpleasant withdrawal symptoms. So benzos are not something to be taken lightly. None of this medication is meant to be taken lightly. But the reality is that sometimes that's what I have to do to manage my anxiety. I mentioned sleep, I mentioned nighttime, and I also struggle with insomnia. It's generally related to my anxiety. Primarily, it's when I wake up in the middle of the night, maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and I can't get back to sleep. Although sometimes I'm not able to fall asleep in the first place. So I've done cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. I really recommend Sleepio. That's what got me through that. But sometimes that's still not enough. And Zolpidem is the medication that I know and love. It's also called Intermezzo. That's the brand name. And there are small little tablets that are sublingual. So you take it out and you put it under the tongue and it dissolves. And it allows you, it's a smaller dose. Basically, you need to have 4 hours to sleep to be able to take one of these. And I would say even after 4 hours, I feel a little bit groggy in the morning. So this is a really interesting medication, and it's been a lifesaver for me in many cases when I just feel like I can't get the sleep that I need. So those are the medications that I'm taking currently. And the reason, again, I'm sharing this video is that, they're in some ways they're just pills, but they've also been a lifesaver for me. I think sometimes it's easy to feel like you're not strong if you have to rely on medication, and that's not true. No matter how you're treating your anxiety, if you're treating it, you're doing the right thing, and that looks different for everyone. So if you are interested in learning more about taking medication for yourself, talk to your licensed practitioner, work with them to figure out what that might look like, and then you can have hopefully a better balanced, happier existence as I've had for the last 5.5 years. Okay, that's the end of part 1. Come back later for part 2, and I'm going to talk about the process I'm going through now, which is titrating my medication, taking less of it. Bye.